My name is Lieutenant Colonel Sean O'Reilly for the 3 of you I've not met before, which makes me feel better because I thought this was going to be a whole room full of people I didn't know, and I'm being recorded, and I was so nervous. I am the Dean with the 42nd CTS. I have been on orders on and off for the last year to help create an instructor skills course, working with Captain Murphy and Presto, and reinvigorating that. It used to be IQC. Before that, it was ICC, went away, became ACDC, and then bringing back, kind of going full circle. So I've been doing that. This is one of those lessons. So a little bit about me. I've been with the Space Aggressors doing EW. I was with Advanced EHF as a contractor, teaching international partners how to use the comm planning system. Before that, I worked at the GSSE, which is now RSSE West. So I teach a lot in the EW course, some of those relationships and RF. I've worked with Sergeant James on the weapons and tactics side and the evaluator side. My day job, when I am not here teaching, I teach high school chemistry. So I've got my teaching certification in addition to biochem degree and all this, like Air Force, in their infinite wisdom, put me as a cyber officer. So, needs of the Air Force, I guess. So this is one of those lessons. So show of hands, how many people have ever been in a lesson where the instructor is teaching you and you are doing something else in your head, making your grocery list, thinking about what time you need to pick up your kids? You never, Rails, you are a good student, Rails, yeah. How many of you also have felt like that as the instructor, right? You felt like you're just talking and talking. You've got that crappy time slot, first lesson right after lunch, or the last lesson of the day and the HVAC system is not working, or there's been a snow delay and you've been asked to teach a 3-hour RF fundamentals lesson in 2 hours, right? And sometimes you're just up there talking and it's awful. So hopefully this lesson on active participation is going to give you some tips and tricks how to get a little bit more student involvement. The easy ways, the ones that take a little bit more planning. We are going to talk about all the different characteristics of active participation, what it actually is, define it first until we can't really discuss it until we've defined it, some of the benefits of that, and then I'm going to have you do an activity at the end to not necessarily demonstrate, but to look at some activities and kind of figure out which ones are going to fit best in the lessons you teach and for your style, because not everything works for everybody. I'm not asking you to do something that doesn't work for you, because I've been asked that before, and it's terrible. So I'm not asking you to do something that doesn't work for you. I'm asking you to have an open mind and try some of these. So before we start, active participation. You have a Dayglow yellow or Dayglow green index card in front of you. If you need a pen, I've got some, but I want you to write down one thing you either already know about active participation from the student learning perspective, or something you think just based on the words active participation. From the student learning perspective. You have 1 minute. I've got pens if anybody needs them. About 10 more seconds to wrap up your thoughts. All right, now what I want you to do is find the other students in this room that have written something similar to you. If I have 18 people in one group and one person all by themselves, I am okay with that. If I have a lot of onesies by themselves, but I want you to walk around, figure out who else in this room has something similar. All right, you got about 30 more seconds to settle into your groups. I think I've got engagement up here. Over in this corner, questioning, deeper questioning over here, I've heard. All right. I need. Stand with somebody that's the same person. You can stand. It's okay if you thought of something. That means that you are more creative than everyone else. All right. My large group, what is it that you came up with? Engagement. Increases student engagement. Yeah. This little gaggle. Questioning. Questioning, yeah. Over here, were you questioning as well? So I've got, did anybody come up with something other than engagement or questioning?
We had demonstrations.
Demonstrations, okay.
The demonstrations are actually getting the students up and going on board as teams.
Up and moving around. Those are all fantastic answers, and every single one of you is correct. Those are all different facets of active participation.
Except yoke. Could you say for the record, yoke was not right?
On the camera.
Brian is recording.
I don't know that I'm comfortable as an outsider doing that. Oh, I know. Hey, I didn't say it. Have a seat. You are all 100% correct. All of those things, questioning techniques, student engagement, getting up and moving, those are all different facets of active participation and what we're going to go over in the next, hopefully only like 20 minutes. So how do students learn? That is a loaded question. How do students learn? Lots of different ways. It depends, right? Some people prefer to read the material. Some prefer to be lectured at. Some prefer to do hands-on kinesthetic. It's all just a preference. The science that is out there does not necessarily support that someone learns better or worse with one style. How they do learn better is if you mix and match, is if you combine a lot of different styles of instruction in the classroom, your students are going to learn better. So active participation. I'm going to read this definition. When I get to the yellow, bold, underlined word, I want you to all say it together, right? When I get to the yellow, bold, underlined words, you read that as a class. Active participation is the consistent and simultaneous engagement of the minds of all the learners within the content of the lesson. What does that mean? Consistent. What does that mean? Yeah, so Yoke says he does this, use it consistently. What does that mean? Throughout the entire lesson. Nailed it. If I start out super engaged, like I got you guys up and walking, and now if I talk at you for the next 30 minutes, and then I have you do an activity at the end, are you engaged through the meat of that lesson? No, you're not. I've got some active participation techniques, but I do not have an actively participating classroom. Simultaneous. What's that one? Same time. What at the same time?
Keeping all the students on the same page.
Keeping all the students on the same page. I had you read those letters. How many people, words, letters, words, I had you read those words together, right? Sometimes you will have one side of the class that is not necessarily as engaged as the other side. You can hear that as the instructor. I can hear that this side was louder. What should I do in that situation? Do I just move on? Start picking on the other side? There's a couple different techniques. You could say, hey, I'm going to try that again. I need just the left side of the room to read the words. Or maybe I didn't set that up very well. We're going to try it again. I need everybody to do it. In high school, I've done this like 4 or 5 times in a row. Oh, didn't hear everybody. They learn real quick. Everybody's got to participate or Mrs. Riley's going to make it painful. So simultaneous, everybody has to be engaged. No one is off the hook. You can't let anyone off the hook. That being said, we're working with adults. They have competing interests. While they're in our courses, that is their primary job, but that doesn't mean they don't have lives outside of our classrooms. Maybe something's going on at home with their kids, with their pet, with their yard they got a fine for having a brown yard. I don't know. Their car broke down this morning. Adults have competing interests. Knowing your students is going to help you know when you should back off a little bit and not really drive that hard line. Active participation is also such participation increases the
Rate and degree
of learning. Increases the rate and degree. So I heard a lot of getting to the deeper questions, the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy, critical thinking. With active participation, your students are more engaged with the material and say they learn it faster and to a higher degree. So there's three main types, very similar to those learning preferences. They are visual, auditory, and physical. So an example of a visual active participation is just as simple as, all right, raise your hand. Show me, yeah, okay, if I ask a question. Show of hands, who owns a Volkswagen? Right? So nobody, clearly, right? Okay, and then you can further discussion. But you can see immediately who's engaged, who's not engaged. Sometimes if you want those tougher questions where you don't want your students to be embarrassed. All right, who's understanding? Have I lost anybody? Give me a thumbs up if you understand what I'm talking, feel like you understand. Thumbs down if you don't. So now your students, some of your more introverted students, aren't going to be as embarrassed to tell you that they're not tracking because the rest of the students don't know. It's really just enclosed right here, but you as the instructor have that opportunity to gauge that and say, oh, I feel like I've lost some of you. Maybe I'm not saying this right. Let me reword it. Or you have a good understanding. Can you explain it in a different way? And have a student that does understand it come up and explain it differently. We also have auditory, answering together, reading together, something that I can easily hear as the instructor that everybody's at least engaged. So there's engagement and there's mastery. Engagement is just making sure you're paying attention, what we did with the reading. Mastery is, okay, I need you to do this DB math problem. Do it on your whiteboard right now. All right, all together, what did you get? And if everybody says 53 dB, I can hear that. But if there's a lot of hems and haws and stumbling over it, but that way has to have a definitive answer. It can't be open-ended. It has to have a clear answer to it. But then I can hear, ooh, you guys maybe we weren't as sure on that. Let's work it out together. And then kinesthetic. The SAPR folks are very good at this, right? Your green dot training, your SAPR training, they always have you, all right, go to this side of the room if you agree, go to this side of the room if you disagree. Those types of activities where you just get up and you get moving. Those would be your more kinesthetic activities. Why do we do this? Because if we didn't, everybody would be dying slow intellectual deaths. It is called death by PowerPoint for a reason. It's awful. If you're just being talked at, it's miserable. You're doing your grocery list, figuring out your kid's schedule after work. I gotta go get my oil changed. When am I gonna do that this week? You're not paying attention. Students more engaged, they learn better, they learn to a deeper level. Classroom is more dynamic. You're engaged, you're having fun. Do people learn better when they're having fun? Yeah, they do. Again, faster and to a higher degree when you're having fun and when you're happy and when you're engaged. Another really great benefit for those 3-hour RF fundamental. I hate that lesson so much, but I teach it. Because I love you guys, I teach that lesson. It gives you, the instructor, a break from talking, and it gives your students a break from having to listen to you, which, let's all be honest, that's kind of important sometimes. Especially when you have all the lessons that day, you need a break from talking. Instant feedback on engagement or mastery, depending on the type of activity or question you ask. And it ensures that you're mixing up those different learning styles. Everybody's getting a little bit of something that they prefer. So here's a question for you. On the back of your Dayglow index card, I want you to take 60 seconds to write down the active participation techniques that I have used so far in the last 15 minutes, silently and independently. All right, wrap up. I see a few people writing, people who have sat through this lesson a few times already. All right, just take some time, shout out some of the things that I've done. Kinesthetic, I had you get up, pair up with people who had the same, right? What else have I done? Auditory, where I did the reading. That's a technique called cloze reading, C-L-O-Z-E. Cloze reading, where you have the entire class read a specific word. That one, if you have a class for a long period of time and they're trained to do that, then sometimes you can get in the rhythm of they see a yellow word, you're going to read it, you do the voice inflection, you don't have to set it up. But that takes a little bit of work at the beginning. You can do it, but you have to make sure for like a one lesson, but you have to make sure that you set it up properly so they know what's expected of them. What else have I done?
Visual.
Visual. When did I do visual?
When you asked show of hands.
Show of hands. So from my high school teacher self, high schoolers are naughty, right? So if I do show of hands and I demonstrated, that does not leave any room for discussion, right? I did that with you guys too, because teachers make the worst students. I'm not gonna lie, just as bad as high schoolers. But if I demonstrate it, there is no confusion about what my expectation is, right? Have I done anything else?
Rewrite. You had us write stuff down.
I had you write stuff down, yep. Kind of almost like a think, pair, share. Think about it, pair up, share it with the group. So a kind of a version of it, but I had you stand up also. Anything else that I'm missing? Did you guys, my experts, catch anything else? I don't know, I forget sometimes. I black out while I'm teaching. No, that was a good, you guys got a lot of them. Let's see. So last activity, because this is a very short lesson, because RIT can be painful, and I don't want this to be painful, especially since I'm just meeting some of you. I don't want to be that teacher. So you also now have a packet in front of you from Pima County is where I've got this. This is also on the shared drive. This is just a list of different techniques that you could possibly use. It is not all encompassing. It does not even include all the things that I've done today that you guys noticed. I've got a couple extras up here. Go through this. What I'd like you to do is go through this packet. There are 3 main categories. They are marked with Roman numerals. 1, quick strategies. Number 2 is ones that take a little more prep time. And 3 is more like wrap it up at the end. I would like identify a couple that you think would fit with your teaching style, that would work in a lesson that you want to, that you already do teach in. I got one more. I'm short just one. All right, I will get it.
No, that's okay, right?
I need to share. Oh, I was one short, dang it. I didn't know how many people would be here. Yeah, just go through, find one in each category that you think would work for you and your teaching style, and then pair up with someone next to you and talk about what you have found. All right, I want my group A over here. What's one that you guys pointed out that maybe a lot of you thought would be a majority of you or a few of you?
Oh, yeah. I used to teach senior officers, and then it went over to NSSI. But one of the problems with them is everybody said, well, you can't give quizzes to senior folks. Well, yeah, of course
Yeah, you
you
can.
can. So I would finish a lesson and put 4 or 5 multiple choice questions. And as we went through them, I would ask them, they'd give them cards A, B, C, D. Of course, they're always looking at the senior guy to find out, so what's the right answer here? And I got rid of that and just do gang signs, A, B, C.
Right.
It worked pretty
Yeah.
well, too, 'cause people are really shy about looking bad because they're
Yeah.
supposed to know everything.
Right. That's a great one. I will call Rails out as well. DB Math, he is very good at the beginning of DB Math. Not use a slide. Let's just find out what you know. Talk me through it on the board. I do, we do, you do. And getting those students engaged before jumping into DB Math, which nobody likes except maybe Rails and me. I love DB Math. That's why they're the ones that teach it. What else did you have any other ones that jumped out at you? I know Major, soon to be Lieutenant Colonel Mandelbaum, I heard you talking about your ACDC.
Well, yeah, we do the jigsaw in ACDC where we kind of split the group into 2 and have them be parts of the OI.
Right.
And then teach it to each other the next day.
Yeah.
That seems-
That one can be done within a 1-hour class period if that is all you have to address. So that one's tougher to get in a shorter time frame. I will let you know, as a chemistry teacher, I was told we had an external evaluator coming in, and that was the activity they wanted us to try. It does not work for me. I cannot make that fit in chemistry with my teaching style. It was a disaster. She told me, best advice I've ever gotten in an evaluation, if it's not working, bail. Go back to what you know, go back to what you've been previously successful at. Try these new techniques, but if it doesn't work, don't force it. Okay? You don't have to force something. It's going to make it worse. You're going to be a less effective teacher if you're trying to force a technique that's not authentic to you. What about this side of the room? What's something that you guys came up with that you liked?
You had the pass play, you used the pass play.
Yeah, we use it a lot in SCW. So if the student is stumped or just really doesn't know, we kind
Right.
of make them choose who's going to answer the question.
Yeah.
I use predict, but it doesn't always work. So if I teach EMI, I go back to like Operation Anaconda and I give them a scenario and ask them to predict what caused that EMI. And usually it's not a trick question, but most people really don't know that it's like plasma space bubbles, and it was this whole thing. But at least gets them thinking.
Right.
They start with, was it weather? Was it equipment? Things
Right.
like that. If it's an older crowd, they usually do know. So
Yeah.
it usually.
The seen it before theorem?
Yeah,
I've seen that
probably
before.
watched an Amazon documentary.
Right. Hey, some of us like those Amazon documentaries, all right? What about my back row? My students that are good readers and direction followers.
So Alicia added to our feedback the 12-word summary.
Yeah.
You don't require 12 words, but it's tell us the most significant thing you learned.
Right.
And this is the formal feedback that we get because that allows us to see are we accomplishing the intended effect.
That's a great one. Yeah, I like that one. There's a lot. So there is a lot in that packet. You are allowed to keep that packet. Again, they're on the shared drive in like 18 different places. I think it's in the BISC course development, BISC master course file, in the 319th, everything that I've ever saved, not 319th, 42nd side, every time I've ever saved this lesson somewhere. All the IQC, well, the more recent IQC right at the end of life, called active participation. In the BISC, it's called teaching strategies. It was revamped a little bit. If you have more questions or anything that you would like to just talk about, bounce some ideas, I am always available. So I say always available, right? I am a TR, but I'm what we in the 42nd refer to as a high participating TR, which means I check my email when I'm not on orders. So, and I'm in a lot, right? So if you ever want to reach out to me, shauna.riley@us.af.mil or spaceforce.mil. I think both of them work. You can always reach out to me. My ACDC folks, they are very well versed in this lesson as well, so you can ask them. I know Jen has taught this before in one flavor or another. So, parting words. Will you please read that for me? Oh, someone whose name I don't know. Doug.
That's my punishment.
Uh-huh.
Tell me and I will forget. Show me and I may remember. Involve me and I will understand.
So clearly not a new concept, right? But let's get the butts out of the seats, get moving, enjoy the material a little bit more. All right, so we talked about active participation. You guys defined it really well at the beginning on your own. We talked about the three main categories. What were those? Kinesthetic, I heard another one. Visual, and then there's one more. Auditory. Why we use active participation, because I don't want to speak for 4 hours in a row, and you don't want to listen to me, is really a big one, and we don't want to all die slow intellectual deaths. And then we identified some strategies that you're either using currently or ones that you could also potentially use in future lessons. Again, everything we talked about, and then the benefits, kind of the why we use it, and the benefits are the same. What questions do you have for me? Yes, sir.
Really a question,
Yeah.
so much as maybe a comment.
Uh-huh.
Based on the techniques/strategies that you may or may not use, but it has to be tied somewhat with the ISD, I imagine, because you could get into a situation where you're going to time bust a lesson in the content in terms of what you're trying
Absolutely.
to convey if you're using activities that are taking up more time.
Absolutely. That is a very valid point. So some folks, if you didn't hear him, based on the time, the ISD process, we're constrained in our lessons and what those LOs and SOBs are. So you don't want
If
to...
you were constrained, I would just say as part of the ISD, you would have to take into account these activities.
Right, if you're going to add it. So EW, we play the game, throwing the softballs at the board. We take 30 minutes to do the Lucky Strike cigarette, draw it out on the board, the RF spectrum. A lot of those activities are built into the lessons. Those ones take a significant more amount of time.
And I know in ACDC they talk about activities and how you go about, incorporating those. And
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. If you do it in the ISD and you don't have it accounted for, and you go with some of these that are time consuming.
Right.
it's not-
Yeah, so absolutely, you do need to consider that when you're planning to go in and teach that lesson. Are you trying to add something that's going to take a lot of time? And what's the trade-off? Are you going to take away from actually meeting those LOs and SOBs? Maybe you start with the think, pair, share, or show of hands, or engagement through questioning. Some of those easier, less time-consuming ones until you can come up with an activity to facilitate, but go through the process to get the time allotted that you're going to need for that. That is a fantastic point. What else? Any other? Yeah, talk to me.
One of the things that helps is if the students know something about the topic, and one of the ways to do that is to give them homework,
Yeah.
which we don't really do a very good job at as a school
Not a lot of homework.
in general, which I think is totally within reason. And maybe one of the things we can look at is we're starting to move to some online lessons that could be reviewed right before a lesson is being taught.
Yeah. So that would absolutely be like a flipping the classroom scenarios where they watch a video of maybe I instruct or Rails instructs DB math for that hour, and then we only need 30 to 45 minutes in the classroom. We just do practice problems, right? So go home, learn the foundational knowledge content, and then come in the classroom for that actual application activity. That would absolutely be a good way to do that. What other thoughts or questions do you have?
I'm dying to ask in your other life, because chemistry was my nemesis. How do you teach them to understand the formulas and how things transform in chemistry?
A lot of demonstrations, a lot of hands-on. I have found the use of, it's a technique called modeling, where, so for example, for electron configurations, those are hard, right? It's 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, like those numbers where the electrons fall. So before I ever teach that lesson, I spend an entire day playing a game where they have to put beans in cups. And you have to either a white bean or a red bean. That represents the spin of the electron. There can only be 2 beans per cup. And then I go through that. We play a whole day of just playing games, figuring out, okay, now I want you to get beans into this level. How are you going to do it? And how does that look? And then for the rest of that unit, I say, remember back to the bean game. Oh, I've seen something that they can relate it to that's tangible, hands-on. Because chemistry is very much, you can't see it, you don't understand it. It's hard, it is magic. And I start, I love chemistry because it makes magic real, right? That is why I teach chemistry. I think it's awesome. Now I'm all smiley. I'm like, let's talk about chemistry. But, so I do a lot. I try to incorporate a lot of modeling that way. Play-Doh, I bring Play-Doh. Let them be kids for a little while, and then tie it into chemistry. Anything else? All right. You don't have to do lesson feedback. Please don't do lesson feedback. All right. That's it. So I was right under 40 minutes. I didn't want to take a whole hour. So I don't know what's next. It's not me. To be quite frank, I'm not staying because I'm going to be watching this recording over at UTA, and I have no desire to watch this twice. So someone else take this. All right, yours.
All right, so we're going to discuss over the past 7.5 months now, from January to now, everything that we have seen from your AARs, from the Swifts, just Excel sheets, and also kind of where DOK is going to go with your lessons learned and any trends that we've been seeing, and a new, I don't really want to call it system, but it's essentially a system that we're going to go along to start looking at students and how they're communicating with you before courses and also during courses to make sure that we're getting the right amount of discipline in. So between January 1st and as of like 2 days ago, these are, and another slide, of the most prevalent of our trends and DAIs. So test questions, there's a lot about mistakes, ambiguity, and high missed. So I know that after every course, everyone takes a look at what questions are missed or all of that. We are constantly revamping our courses, but this is just something that is consistent across the board for all of the courses. So as we're going through, if things are similar or the same in between your courses, and you can talk with others or work with a DEO flight just to understand what is going on and why these students are missing it, or just how to make it more concise along with the SOBs and your LOs. And then for the instructors, this is a big one. Biggest thing is, one, we want more instructors. The military needs to get more involved, and we're gonna start looking at the best way to get more of us in to your courses and how we can make sure that we're reliable. I know that the 42nd has a difficult time having people consistently here, and a lot of the feedback that we have seen is that some of the instructors don't seem as prepared or as knowledgeable on the material that they're teaching. So we need to find a way to work with the instructors, especially those that aren't consistently teaching, to make sure that if there are updates to your courseware or they're just been out of pocket for a while, that we get them involved beforehand and ensure that they are doing run-throughs, not necessarily like a certification run-through, but just making sure that they have the material in their head and they can answer questions. So it doesn't seem like the school or whoever else is watching this, the students don't think, oh, they don't really know, and this is just like flying by the seat of the pants. And then for student selection and registration, the biggest thing for SWIFT courses that we have seen is that they don't know when to start applying, who applies. I mean, we just got an email yesterday asking who can actually apply for SWIFT courses. Is it for just brand new Space Force people, or is it for the brand new sessions coming out of UST? So I think we need to start defining more what our expectations are for students, aside from like our boarded courses that are given to us for names. And also late ads. I know Mark's favorite thing as of late. I know that sometimes we have issues with stakeholders or other boards giving us names late, and everyone has said we've done an amazing job getting them in, registered, prepared for the course when it's late. So that's a positive, but we just need to work through, and I know that we've been working really hard to make sure that whoever has to give us names or units, if they're late to the game and they're not giving you names, you're calling them out and saying, hey, this is our process, we have a checklist. Either you're going to abide by it, or you're gonna have to come back later, or you're gonna have to figure out a waiver. So just be blunt with them and tell them this is our process, you need to respect it. So time, I know that everyone has seen this and it's been your most awesome thing of, well, we want more time. This lesson in of itself needs to be like 2 days long because we don't get it. Or more sim time, which more sim time. But I know that we have limitations. We share with the NSSI and everything else, but I think along with our lesson that we just went through, we could look at more activities inside of your lessons to try to get more participation, more understanding. I know people want to be hands-on because they're terrified to go back to their units or go out to an AOC and then have to operate on these, and they're like, I don't really have it. And I don't have the knowledge for whatever system that they're using. But that is something that we can't necessarily prescribe and have an end-all be-all resolution for, but just so you're aware that is a trend for us. And then prep. There were several comments about slide errors, not preparation for any mobile courses, not having equipment ready, not having the material there for the unit that they're teaching. So I think just being a little more cognizant as we start preparing for courses. I know we already all do this, but just in those one-offs, making sure that we're following the checklist and having everything prepared because that looks better for our students. And then Intel docs is another one that we have seen a lot across the courses about making sure that everything is organized. And I think that's the biggest one that I saw was that organization on Nipper for Intel docs is kind of wishy-washy. And also making it more reliable and updating it. I know that when we start courses and trying to update Tizzle or putting all of our material for every offering onto the other systems and just keep moving it. We also need to be cognizant of Intel docs, making sure that those are ready for the students. And I apologize, this seems like I'm just like talking at you. Thanks. And then student knowledge coming out of UST. I have seen this just sitting in some classes recently, that there is a lack of understanding, and I know that the unit has tried to make a cognizant effort to go meet with the 533rd over at Vandenberg to see what they're doing with UST. But if you guys could give us as DOK some feedback saying, hey, they really are not getting this at UST, and they're coming in at a deficit. And I know that with the Swifts, we have some different levels of learning. Oh, people have been in for just a little bit longer, or they're literally just from UST. We want to start correlating that and figuring out what we can do to better prepare and make sure that we have the same level of expectation for those students coming in, so it's not like we have to backtrack and teach over again. That's double effort on your part, that's double effort on the student's part. We just see if we can start eliminating that. But if you start seeing trends, just send it towards us. As part of that, going into the program that I was talking about, we are going to start trending students, units, all of that for pre-course execution. We're gonna see who's causing problems, who's kind of not sending stuff in, who's not doing their distance learning, start trending to see if that's a similar thing across the board for like one unit or just one student as a one-off kind of thing. And then also during execution, we're going to get some feedback from y'all in the AAR. So it's not going to be a whole new process. We're just going to update the AAR and say, hey, please provide feedback that you had XYZ happen during your course. If a student's consistently late, or you've had to verbally counsel them, or you had to bring in the course directors and say, hey, they're a behavioral problem. We want to start documenting that so that we can do right by the units and do right by you guys as instructors to make sure that we're setting the expectation from the get-go at the units before they send them to us, that you're not going to mess around. Please be respectful, be professional, do what you're told. So that's pretty much all I have. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Does DOK, is it your role to reach out to the other units, either 533rd or to our stakeholders? No?
Outside of our courses, no. So.
The only real reach out we do, please, is we sit into web tech. If we get any new 3-1s, 3-3s that come out of there, our tips or bulletins that come out of there, we help to integrate that, but that's really it.
The question I ask, and maybe it's a DO to DO conversation, we in SBM will get students coming down from the 460th. They'll go to UST at the 533rd, they'll go to the 460th, and they will sit for literally months watching contractors pull cables and paint walls. And we know that knowledge is perishable, and by the time they get to us, we do have to do some reteaching. Meanwhile, we have students that come from other places going to a radar, they're fresh out of UST. So we have to have this balance where they're going, oh, this is the same thing we just saw, a couple weeks ago. So I'd like to, I don't know who would do it, but have a conversation with the 460th OSS about fixing that cycle.
That's a good idea. I think we'll look at, now that you've identified, look back at some of the average wait times. Right now we're looking at an average, but we can break that down more specifically for some courses where we've got outliers on both sides and see how we can get everyone closer to a median. So so that they have the same perishability, or same amount of knowledge perish.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Feedback for me? Anything I can do for you guys? Anything that DOK can do for you? No? Cool. Well, thank you.